Dr. Ethan Reeves had always been fascinated by the fundamental forces of the universe. As a theoretical physicist specializing in gravitational waves, he spent his days pondering the mysteries of black holes and the fabric of spacetime. But on that fateful Friday afternoon, theory became reality in a way he could never have imagined. The Gravitational Wave Observatory at Millbrook University was Ethan's sanctuary. At 40, he was one of the leading researchers in his field, known for his innovative approaches to detecting and analyzing gravitational waves. Today, he was fine-tuning the observatory's newest piece of equipment, a cutting-edge gravitational wave detector that promised to revolutionize their understanding of cosmic events. As Ethan made the final adjustments to the detector, his colleague and longtime friend, Dr. Samantha Wu, burst into the room. "Ethan, you've got to see this," Sam exclaimed, her eyes wide with excitement. "The data from the last test run, it's like nothing we've ever seen before." Ethan's brow furrowed as he examined the readouts on Sam's tablet. "This can't be right," he muttered. "According to this, we're not just detecting gravitational waves, we're generating them?" Sam nodded vigorously. "I know it sounds crazy, but I've triple-checked the calculations. Something in our setup is actually producing microscopic gravitational disturbances." As they pored over the data, neither of them noticed the detector beginning to emit a low, pulsing hum. It wasn't until a shower of sparks erupted from the machine that they realized something was terribly wrong. "It's overloading!" Ethan shouted, lunging for the emergency shutdown. But it was too late. A blinding flash of light filled the room, accompanied by a deafening boom that seemed to shake the very foundations of reality. Ethan felt a strange sensation, as if he were being stretched and compressed simultaneously. Then, darkness. When Ethan came to, he found himself floating near the ceiling of the lab, Sam's panicked face looking up at him from below. "Ethan? Oh my God, Ethan, are you okay? Can you hear me?" Ethan blinked, trying to process what was happening. I think so. But Sam, why am I up here? And why aren't I falling?" Sam's voice was shaky. "I don't know, there was some kind of gravitational pulse when the detector overloaded. It knocked me across the room, but you just started floating." Ethan looked around, his scientist's mind already racing with possibilities. He noticed that while he was floating, nothing else in the room seemed affected. "It's like my personal gravitational field has been altered," he mused. As he focused on the idea of moving downward, Ethan felt himself slowly descend. When he concentrated on staying still, he stopped in midair. "Sam," he said, a mix of fear and excitement in his voice, "I think I can control gravity, at least as it affects me." Sam's eyes widened. "That's impossible. The energy required to manipulate gravity like that, it would be enormous." Ethan nodded, his mind whirling with implications. "I know, but somehow that pulse from the detector must have changed something fundamental about my interaction with spacetime." As the reality of what had happened began to sink in, Ethan couldn't help but laugh at the irony. He had spent his entire career studying gravity, and now, through a twist of fate, he had become its master. Little did Ethan know, this was just the beginning of his journey as the gravity guru, a journey that would challenge his understanding of physics, ethics, and the very nature of reality itself. The next few days were a whirlwind of discovery and near disasters for Ethan. He quickly learned that his newfound ability to manipulate gravity was both exhilarating and potentially catastrophic. At first, controlling his power was a constant struggle. Ethan would find himself suddenly floating to the ceiling in the middle of a conversation, or inadvertently increasing his weight so much that he left footprints in the linoleum floor. More than once, Sam had to make excuses for his strange behavior to their confused colleagues. But as time passed, Ethan began to gain some control over his ability. He discovered that he could not only manipulate gravity's effect on himself, but also on objects around him. With concentration, he could make items float, increase or decrease their weight, and even create localized gravitational fields. Sam, sworn to secrecy about Ethan's condition, helped him run tests in the lab after hours. They found that Ethan's power seemed to stem from an ability to manipulate the curvature of space-time in his immediate vicinity. It was as if he had become a living, breathing gravitational wave generator. "It's incredible, Ethan," Sam marveled as they reviewed the test results. "You're doing things that should require the energy output of a small star, but somehow your body is channeling that power without any apparent energy source." Ethan nodded, his mind racing with the implications. "It defies everything we know about physics, Sam. Do you realize what this could mean for our understanding of gravity, of the fundamental forces of the universe?" But along with the scientific excitement came ethical dilemmas. Ethan found himself constantly tempted to use his ability for personal gain. He could effortlessly lift heavy objects, float instead of climb stairs, even fly if he wanted to. The possibilities seemed endless. The temptation came to a head one evening as Ethan was leaving the lab. As he walked through the parking lot, he saw a car that had fallen off its jack, trapping someone underneath. Without thinking, Ethan used his power to lighten the car, easily lifting it off the trapped individual. As a small crowd gathered, murmuring in amazement, Ethan realized he had exposed himself. He quickly made an excuse about an adrenaline rush and hurried away, but the incident left him shaken. That night, as Ethan lay in bed, unable to sleep, he realized that his life had changed forever. He wasn't just a scientist anymore. He had become something else, something unprecedented. And with that change came a tremendous responsibility. As he finally drifted off to sleep, Ethan made a decision. He would continue to research his condition, to understand it better. But he would also use his ability to help people, to make a difference. He just had to figure out how to do it without getting caught or disrupting the very fabric of space-time. Little did Ethan know forces were already in motion that would put his newfound powers and his ethics to the ultimate test. A month after the accident, Ethan had settled into something of a routine with his new abilities. He continued his research at the university, using his power discreetly to make breakthrough after breakthrough in the field of gravitational physics. In his free time, he had taken to patrolling the city, using his ability to prevent accidents and help people in need. But on a crisp autumn morning, everything changed. Ethan was in his office, reviewing data from his latest experiment, when he felt it, a tremor in the gravitational field. The world around him seemed to waver, like heat ripples on a hot day, then snapped back to normal. A moment later, it happened again. Frowning, Ethan closed his eyes and focused on his gravitational sense. What he felt chilled him to the bone. The fabric of space-time was fluctuating, warping in ways he had never experienced before. And it was getting worse. Just then, Sam burst into his office, her face pale. "Ethan, are you feeling this? The gravitational readings are off the charts." Ethan nodded grimly. "I can feel it, Sam. Something's wrong with the local gravitational field. We need to figure out what's causing it, fast." As they rushed to the lab, Ethan's mind raced with possibilities. Had his accident with the gravitational wave detector caused some kind of delayed reaction in space-time? Or was something else at play? The lab was in chaos when they arrived. Instruments were going haywire, and several of their colleagues were looking around in confusion as objects began to float randomly or suddenly became too heavy to lift. Ethan approached the gravitational wave detector, which was humming ominously. As he reached out to touch it, another gravitational tremor hit, stronger than before. The world around him fractured, showing glimpses of warped space-time, stretching and compressing like a funhouse mirror. "It's not stable," Ethan muttered. "The local gravitational field is fracturing. If we don't do something, it could tear apart completely." Sam looked at him, fear evident in her eyes. "What can we do?" Ethan took a deep breath. He knew what he had to do, but it was risky. "I need to use my ability. I think I can stabilize the gravitational field, but I'll have to push my power further than I ever have before." "Ethan, no," Sam protested. "It's too dangerous. We don't know what could happen to you." But Ethan had already made up his mind. "We don't have a choice, Sam. If we don't act now, who knows what could happen to the entire city, maybe even beyond." Before Sam could argue further, Ethan closed his eyes and reached out with his gravitational sense. He pushed harder than he ever had before, extending his perception not just to manipulate gravity, but to see the very fabric of spacetime itself. What he saw was beautiful and terrifying. The curvature of spacetime flowed around him like a cosmic ocean, but there were disturbances in the flow, ripples and eddies that threatened to tear the fabric apart. Ethan focused, using his ability to smooth out the disturbances, to guide the gravitational waves back into their proper flow. It was like trying to calm a stormy sea with his bare hands. But slowly, painfully, he began to make progress. In the physical world, Sam and the others watched in awe as Ethan began to glow with an otherworldly light. The gravitational anomalies intensified for a moment, then began to subside. Just when Ethan thought he had succeeded, he felt something else in the gravitational field, another presence vast and ancient. It noticed him, and for a moment, Ethan felt as if he were making eye contact with the universe itself. Then, with a final surge of effort, Ethan pushed the last of the gravitational disturbances back into place. The space-time fabric stabilized, the anomalies ceased, and Ethan collapsed to the floor, exhausted. As Sam rushed to his side, Ethan's mind reeled with what he had experienced. He had touched something fundamental, something beyond his comprehension. And he had a feeling that it had touched him back. As he drifted into unconsciousness, one thought echoed in his mind. This was only the beginning. When Ethan regained consciousness, he found himself in a hospital bed, Sam dozing in a chair beside him. As he stirred, she jolted awake. "Ethan, thank God you're all right. You've been out for 2 days." Ethan blinked, trying to focus. 2 days? What happened after I collapsed?" Sam leaned forward, her voice low. "The gravitational anomalies stopped. Whatever you did, it worked. But Ethan, things are complicated." Before she could elaborate, a nurse entered the room. To Ethan's shock, the nurse seemed to flicker between normal weight and near weightlessness, momentarily floating before settling back down. "What was that?" Ethan whispered to Sam after the nurse had checked his vitals and left. Sam ran a hand through her hair, a nervous habit. "That's what I was trying to tell you. Ever since you stabilized the gravitational field, weird things have been happening. People and objects occasionally experience sudden changes in their gravitational interactions. It's like the boundaries between different gravitational states have become thin." Ethan's mind raced. "Gravitational bleed-through," he muttered. "The fabric of space-time must have been weakened when I manipulated the gravitational field." As if to confirm his theory, Ethan suddenly felt his own weight fluctuate, briefly feeling as heavy as lead before returning to normal. "We need to fix this," Ethan said, struggling to sit up. "If the gravitational bleed-through gets worse, it could cause panic. Not to mention the potential disasters if people or objects start randomly changing weight or floating away." Sam gently pushed him back down. "You need to rest, Ethan. The doctors say you're suffering from extreme gravitational shock. Whatever you did out there, it took a toll on you." Ethan wanted to argue, but he could feel the exhaustion deep in his bones. More than that, his gravitational sense felt raw, oversensitive. He could feel the pull and push of gravity around him more acutely than ever before. "All right," he conceded. "But as soon as I'm out of here, we need to get to work. This is our fault, Sam. We need to make it right." Sam nodded, squeezing his hand. "We will. Together." Over the next few days, as Ethan recovered, he and Sam pored over data from the gravitational event. They discovered that the gravitational wave detector had been slowly destabilizing the local space-time fabric ever since Ethan's accident. His intervention had prevented a total collapse, but had also thinned the barriers between different gravitational states. As Ethan delved deeper into his research, he began to have strange dreams, visions of possible futures, glimpses of paths not taken. In one particularly vivid dream, he saw himself leading a team of gravity controllers, using his powers to maintain the integrity of Earth's gravitational field. When he woke from that dream, Ethan found that his ability had evolved. He could now not only manipulate gravity, but he could also see brief flashes of gravitational fluctuations before they occurred. It was like a gravitational early warning system. As useful as this new ability was, it also brought new ethical dilemmas. How much should he intervene in events he foresaw? What if changing one thing led to unforeseen consequences down the line? Ethan was pondering these questions one evening as he walked across the university campus. Suddenly, his new gravitational sense flared. He saw a flash of the near future. A construction crane losing stability, its heavy load about to fall on a group of students. Without hesitation, Ethan sprang into action. He used his power to lighten the falling load, guiding it safely to the ground where it landed with a gentle thud instead of a catastrophic crash. As the confused construction workers and relieved students milled about, Ethan slipped away before anyone could question his presence. As he walked home, his mind was turbulent. He had saved lives, but he had also changed the course of events. What ripple effects would this have? His musings were interrupted by the sight of a figure standing in the shadows ahead. As Ethan approached cautiously, the figure stepped into the light. It was a man he'd never seen before, wearing a suit that seemed to shimmer with its own gravitational field. "Hello, Dr. Reeves," the man said with a small smile. "We need to talk about gravity, and about the fate of the universe itself." As Ethan stared at the mysterious stranger, he realized that his journey as the gravity guru was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning. Ethan's mind reeled as he faced the enigmatic figure before him. The implications were staggering. Who was this man? And how did he know about Ethan's abilities? "Who are you?" Ethan asked, his voice steady despite his inner turmoil. "How do you know about me?" The man's smile widened slightly. "My name is Alexander Novak. I represent an organization called the Cosmic Equilibrium Agency. We've been watching you, Dr. Reeves, ever since your accident." Ethan felt a chill run down his spine. "Watching me? Why?" Novak gestured to a nearby bench. "Perhaps we should sit. This might take some explanation." As they sat, Novak began to speak, his voice low and urgent. "Dr. Reeves, what you experienced in the lab was no accident. The gravitational anomalies, your newfound powers, they're all part of a much larger picture." Over the next hour, Novak explained the situation. The Cosmic Equilibrium Agency, it turned out, was a secret organization dedicated to maintaining the balance of fundamental forces across the universe. They had detected a growing instability in the gravitational constant, a change that threatened the very fabric of reality. "We've been searching for someone with the ability to manipulate gravity on a fundamental level," Novak explained. "Someone who could help us correct these dangerous fluctuations. When we detected the surge of gravitational energy at your lab, we knew we'd found our candidate." Ethan's head spun with the implications. "So my accident, it wasn't really an accident?" Novak shook his head. "Not entirely. We nudged things in the right direction. But your innate connection to gravitational forces is all your own, Dr. Reeves. It's what makes you uniquely suited to help us." "Help you do what exactly?" Ethan asked, a mix of curiosity and apprehension in his voice. Novak's expression turned grave. "Save the universe, Dr. Reeves. The gravitational constant is shifting on a cosmic scale. If it's not stabilized, the consequences would be catastrophic. Galaxies torn apart, black holes collapsing or expanding uncontrollably, the very laws of physics breaking down." Ethan felt the weight of this knowledge settle on him like a physical force. "And you think I can prevent this?" "With our help and resources, yes," Novak nodded. "But it won't be easy. There are other forces at work. Entities that see the gravitational shift as an opportunity rather than a threat." "Entities," Ethan echoed, his scientific mind struggling to process these new concepts. Novak sighed. "We call them the gravity Reavers. They're beings from, well, let's just say they're not from around here. They feed on gravitational energy, and they see this universal instability as a feast." As Ethan tried to wrap his mind around this information, his gravitational sense suddenly flared. He felt a massive disturbance approaching, like a tidal wave of warped spacetime. "We're out of time," Novak said urgently, standing up. "They're here. Dr. Reeves, I know this is a lot to take in, but we need your help. Now. Will you come with me?" Ethan hesitated for a moment, his old life flashing before his eyes. Then he thought of the visions he'd had, of the responsibility that came with his newfound power. He stood, meeting Novak's gaze with determination. "Let's go," he said. No sooner had the words left his mouth than the world around them began to warp and twist. The air seemed to thicken, gravity fluctuating wildly. In the distance, Ethan saw what looked like a tear in the fabric of reality itself, a swirling vortex of dark energy. "Gravity Reavers," Novak growled, pulling out what looked like a high-tech wristband. "Dr. Reeves, put this on. It'll help you focus your powers." As Ethan slipped on the device, he felt his connection to the gravitational field intensify. He could sense the Reavers now, vast and hungry, their very presence distorting space-time. "What do we do?" Ethan asked, his voice surprisingly calm despite the chaos unfolding around them. Novak's eyes gleamed with a mix of fear and excitement. "We fight, Dr. Reeves. We fight to keep the universe in balance." And with that, they plunged into battle, Ethan's first as the gravity guru. As he manipulated gravitational fields to counter the Reavers' attacks, Ethan realized that his life had taken a turn he could never have imagined. He was no longer just a physicist studying the universe. He was an active participant in its cosmic drama. The battle raged across Millbrook, invisible to most but felt by all as gravitational anomalies wreaked havoc. Cars floated, buildings groaned under suddenly increased weight, and people found themselves struggling against erratic changes in their personal gravity. Ethan worked in tandem with Novak, using his powers in ways he never thought possible. He created gravitational shields to protect civilians, used micro-black holes to trap Reavers, and manipulated space-time itself to outmaneuver their otherworldly foes. As the fight reached its climax, Ethan found himself face-to-face with the leader of the Gravity Reavers, a being of pure gravitational energy. In that moment, drawing on everything he had learned and every ounce of his newfound power, Ethan made a decisive move. He didn't just fight the Reaver, he communicated with it. Using gravitational waves like a cosmic language, Ethan conveyed the danger of their actions, the delicate balance that was at stake. To his amazement, the Reaver responded. In a moment of profound understanding, Ethan realized that the Reavers weren't evil. They were simply trying to survive, unaware of the damage they were causing. With this newfound common ground, Ethan was able to negotiate a truce. The Gravity Reavers retreated, leaving behind a Millbrook that was shaken but largely intact. As the last traces of the gravitational anomalies faded, Ethan turned to Novak, exhausted but exhilarated. "So," Ethan said with a wry smile, "I'm guessing this is just the beginning?" Novak nodded, a look of respect in his eyes. "Indeed it is, Dr. Reeves. Welcome to the Cosmic Equilibrium Agency. I have a feeling you're going to change the way we approach universal balance." As they walked away from the scene of the battle, Ethan felt a profound sense of purpose settling over him. He had started this journey as a scientist seeking to understand the universe. Now, he was actively working to protect it. The gravity guru had taken his first steps into a larger cosmos, one filled with wonders and dangers beyond imagination. Whatever challenges lay ahead, Ethan knew one thing for certain. He would face them head-on, armed with his intellect, his newfound powers, and the determination to keep the universal balance intact. The battle for Millbrook was over, but the war for cosmic equilibrium had just begun.